At the same time, a very important bill for South Africa's democracy passed through Parliament today. The Electoral Bill allows for independent candidates not aligned to any party to compete in provincial and national elections. Now, in 2020, the Constitutional Court declared that the current Electoral Act is unconstitutional because it does not allow for independent candidates to stand. The deadline to amend the law was missed earlier this year. The court granted Parliament a new deadline in December. Now, today, all of the ANC MPs in the House voted in support. So did the EFF, the DA, IFP, and some of the other smaller parties voted against the bill. While many civil society organizations want independence to stand, they say the bill in its current form is highly flawed. To discuss, we're joined by Rivonia Circle Director, Tessa Dooms. Ms. Dooms, thank you for being with us. As always, what is your response to the bill going through?
I think South Africans need to know that today Parliament took a decision to pass a bill that's been on the table that came from the Minister of Home Affairs office that makes our elections inherently unfair if it becomes the law. And I think that's the thing that parliamentarians missed today, is that when you pass a new law that's going to change the way we vote, one of our fundamental rights, it's not enough to just say and independence and include independence in an arbitrary way. You have to make sure that the election system that you leave behind is still fair. And we have been trying to engage with Parliament for months now. Civil society organizations have had engagements in communities with each other and have written numerous times to the committee, have intended the very scant public engagements that they had earlier in the year to try and signal that this bill is flawed. It's flawed in that it doesn't give independent candidates a fair shot. It makes independent candidates as individuals go head-to-head with entire lists from a party. And that doesn't bode well for the independent candidate, but it also doesn't bode well for us as voters. Because it means that when I vote for an independent candidate who's on the same list as a list from a party that has 50 people, that when I vote for that person, my vote is not of equal value to somebody who votes for a party. And we do have a system that works that includes independent candidates already in South Africa, and that's the local government election system, where you have one ballot for direct election of individuals, and those individuals can be independent candidates or they can be from the parties. That's the ward councillor. And then you have the PR list, which is its own ballot. And that is where groupings like parties then contest with each other. And that system is fair. So we don't know why Parliament has chosen to deviate away from a practice that we know and from a system that is fair and create a system that doesn't only mean that it's unfair for the independent candidate, it's unfair for the voter, and it does not hold the parties accountable.
All right, and the One South Africa movement, for example, was also complaining about the lost votes because, say, an independent candidate gets a lot of votes. There was a lot of debate about where the extra votes go because you only need enough for one person to get one seat. What is the outcome there?
Yeah, so that's what I was meaning about people being on the same votes as individuals and parties. Because essentially, if you're on the same ballot as an individual and a party list, remember the party list has got more than one person. When I vote for an independent candidate, I'm voting for an individual. So if 200,000 votes go to that individual only needs about 50,000 votes, given the current voter size, in order to get a seat, which means the 150 other votes then either get discarded or on a quota system that MPs have still failed to explain, they actually get distributed to larger parties. Whereas a party on that same ballot, when they get those 200,000 votes from voters, all of those votes are used for 4 seats in Parliament. And so the party gets the full benefit of all of the votes that go to them, but the independent candidate doesn't only not get the full value of all of those votes, but those votes are either discarded or given to people that us as voters, when we voted for that independent candidate, did not vote for.
The Minister, Aaron Motsoaledi, has denied that there's been a lack of participation. He said they've really tried. In fact, the ANC has said this bill is almost self-defeating for the party, and they're that big to vote it in. Independent candidates possibly presenting a threat to the ANC. Your response to that?
That is simply untrue, and it's an untruth that the ANC has been telling since the public participation processes, where they brought in masses of their own supporters and they gave them a script that says independent candidates are the big, scary boogeyman, and they're actually going to be voting for the boogeyman. Where the truth is, number one, Parliament had 2 years to come up with a bill, and any party in Parliament could have suggested a bill. In fact, 1SA, even as a civil society organization, suggested a bill. But they waited 18 months for the Minister of Home Affairs to suggest a bill. Then they only had 6 months left, and they had to extend that, get Concord to extend that. So they rushed public participation. They didn't listen when we sent many interventions asking for them to engage meaningfully. So today, to hear that this is the first time they're hearing about these discrepancies is simply untrue. And so the rush is also caused by Parliament dragging its feet. And the rush is caused by the fact that we waited for the Minister of Home Affairs to come up with a bill. Parliament has rushed it through and has not done the public participation any kind of justice, because they've not moved a single inch when people have told them that they're going in the wrong direction. Yeah. They have done very little to make this bill a better bill. And now we're heading into a situation where, the EFF have cavalierly said, well, if we find that the bill is unconstitutional, we must take it to the Constitutional Court. That means we have to wait until we see if the president signs it or not. And then going to the Constitutional Court may actually jeopardize the timeline of the election. Yeah. So where Parliament could have done a good job of creating a constitutional bill, they are now forcing the hand of civil society to go to the Constitutional Court, which may prolong it because the Constitutional Court might send it back. Or worse yet, the Constitutional Court might have to take it upon themselves to try and rectify it by creating the law themselves, which nobody wants. But all of this jeopardizes the election timeline.
But Tessa, talking about the timeline, I mean, if Parliament did re-engineer this bill or fix it as you see it, then the December deadline surely would be missed, which creates a problem. In that case, is this better than nothing? Or would you have preferred that we go into 2024 as is? Or is some participation of independent candidates better than nothing?
So certainly that we are in a bit of a predicament. But the Home Affairs Minister has also given himself and Parliament a bit of an out, because he set up a ministerial advisory committee. And that committee actually gave him 2 bill options that they could have gone with. And the second one, the one they didn't go with, is actually one that resembles the local government elections. So that's one thing, that the work has been done to envision what an alternative could look like. But number 2, the entire process is not over for Parliament yet. Tomorrow, this bill is now in the hands of the NCOP. And the NCOP must apply its mind to this bill. And we must, as the public, send in submissions to the NCOP as a separate process. So if our submissions go in again and tell them this bill is unconstitutional, they need to do something to at least correct those parts of the bill. So maybe we don't need a fresh start, but we need to correct the things that will make this unfair. And there is a process to do that now. But more importantly, when the bill goes to the president, he's already set a precedent a few years ago where he sent a bill back to Parliament before around the artists' IP. He can send the bill back and not put his name to an unconstitutional bill. That's why we have the checks and balances that we do. So Parliament definitely have an opportunity in the NCOP to try and correct this, and the president certainly has a responsibility to correct it.
All right, we will follow that process very closely. Tessa, have you been following other processes? The Deputy President before the NCOP talking about Eskom. It sounds like a reiteration of what has been said. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I haven't been able to follow that fully, but I think that when it comes to the Eskom crisis, I think everybody now admits, even the Minister of Public Enterprises admits that there's a leadership issue at Eskom. That's why we've seen a shift in board. And so it's not just talking about the mechanics and the technicalities of wet coal anymore. We have to have a fundamental conversation about what kind of leadership is required, both in the board and importantly in the executive of Eskom. And we need to ensure also that the political interference and the political pressure that boards in the past have told us they've been under, that gets dealt with, because part of the leadership question is a political leadership question that says, let the experts, if you really believe that this new board is a board of experts, allow them to make the best decisions that the country needs, and allow this process to be one where we actually think through these issues as opposed to make them for reasons that are politically expedient.
All right, thank you for your time this afternoon. Tessa Dooms, Rivonia Circle Director.